What was your "it seemed like a good idea at the time" story? Shooting each other with fireworks on New Year's. One landed directly in between my eyes. Luckily, it didn't go off and I wasn't injured. Me and my friend used to play a game where we threw a Swiss Army knife up in the air at nighttime and then ran away from it, with the knife part out. Holding onto my friend's car mirror while skateboarding on a newly paved parking lot. I ran across the street with my eyes closed. When I was 14, I didn't get hit by a car. However, I ran into a tree headfirst and cut my face and knee open. For all of you asking what my thought process was, it is as follows. Who am I kidding? I have no idea what I was thinking. Being roommates with someone I had a huge crush on, it didn't end well. When I was a kid, I tried to ride my bike up the trunk of a tree so I could kick off and try to land it and it'd be really cool. Turns out a tree trunk is rounded and so you'll just slip off the trunk and hit your head on the tree. My brother still gives me it about trying to ride my bike up a tree. So back in the day, my brothers and I were shooting a bow and arrow behind our house. We had a proper backstop and a nice target on a bale of hay. After about an hour we were getting bored and one of my brothers had a stroke of genius. Let ducking light one on fire. So there we are wiring rags to arrows and soaking them in gas and shooting stuff. Didn't take long and half the yard was on fire. We'd shot pretty much every flammable thing we could burn in the yard. Since we were running short on stuff to shoot, my brother decided to launch one in a 45 arc over the woods behind the house. We all watched, saw, laughing and giggling. When it hit the apex was when it dawned on us that this was in fact a really stupid ducking idea. All 6 of us sprinted off into the woods in the direction it had been shot. Wasn't hard to find, it had lit an entire little meadow on fire. So we ran around stomping out fires for an hour. When we finally got the fire put out, we were sitting by the creek and my oldest brother looks at us all and says, "Dad never hears a word about this." When I was 15, my best friend and I just got new BB pistols. They were the Walther CP99. Looked identical to the real Walther CP9 with a removable magazine and no orange tip. We were playing with them in the backseat of his mom's car. They weren't loaded. We were just excited and wanted to take them out of the box. She knew we had them out and didn't think anything of it. This was the late 90s BTW. Before going back to his house, she went through the drive-thru at Burger King. You know where this is going. She's ordering food with 2 large 15-year-olds holding guns and pointing them at everything. Fast forward 30 minutes. We are pulling into their driveway and his dad comes running out of the house yelling hysterically. One of his friends just called and said he heard on the police scanner that they were looking for his vehicle with 2 white males holding a female hostage at gunpoint. Few minutes later, several police cars pull in the driveway, jump out with guns out, making everyone get on the ground. It took some explaining on his dad's part about us being a bunch of dumbasses. 15-year-old me couldn't figure out what all the fuss was about, but 34-year-old me looks back and realizes that might be the dumbest thing I have ever done. Applying for a PhD position. Itty pay and no free time in sight for the next 3 years. Thanks to it, I despise working in science like never before. Playing sled dog with my newly rescued husky and a longboard on the hilly streets near my house in college. Snapped my right forearm in half and had to walk a mile back home to get a ride to the hospital. Moving in with my girlfriend. I ducked up. It's a disaster that I should have seen coming. Hey, you know those degenerates who you stay out drinking with until sunrise every other day? Why don't you live with them for the last 2 years of law school? That won't cause any issues at all. Cue 2 years of abuse to my body and liver and more than a little strain between me and my friends at the time. Overall it was fun, but definitely not a good idea. I let my 14-year-old cousin at the time try driving the family car. I was like 18 back then or 20, and I told him it's easy to drive an automatic car. Basically like driving a go-kart. Told him gas was right and brakes were center. I forgot to mention that changing the gear to D will automatically have the car move. We both panicked and hit a ducking tree in front of us at probably 1 mile per hour. Luckily we were in our neighborhood by a dead end. Snow water skiing. Me driving the snowmobile across a snowy field and my little brother skiing behind holding a tow rope. 2 broken legs. When I was a teenager, my brother, cousin, and a couple of friends decided to try to steal a Coke vending machine by tipping it over into the back of a Ford Ranger pickup and take off. We were like, we'll just put it in our garage and have plenty of soda and we'll refill it. We had one of those keys for them. It was 2 in the morning and we're all wasted. This was mid-90s mind you, and way out in the country. There was a little store with the machine. We backed up and my brother and I got it rocking back and forth and finally balled into the back of the truck. It lifted the front end of the truck off the ground, and as soon as it landed in the bed my buddies started hauling ass with me trying to jump into the bed with the vending machine, and my brother hopped on the back of the vending machine riding it like a majestic horse. But we forgot to unplug it, and for some reason it was just enough that it pulled the machine out the truck with my brother on it and crashed to the ground. We were young, dumb, and bored as hell, but it made perfect sense to me then. Starting a career in television in the late 90s. I mean, the internet is cool and all, but it's still way too slow to ever compete with 200 TV channels, right? It was winter in New York. I was on my way to a party in the Lower East Side with my girlfriend. There was still plenty of snow on the ground from a recent storm. We were having dinner beforehand, and since the party was only a neighborhood away, we decided to walk the distance. Somewhere around Soho I notice a yellow cab letting out a passenger. When the car behind it started laying on its horn, the cab was barely in the intersection, not really blocking traffic, and he was simply doing his job. But the car behind it just kept honking. Then they just held the horn down. So I bent down, made a snowball, and threw it at the noisy car. The horn immediately stopped. I shouted, "Shut the duck up." Almost instantly, 2 men get out of the car and yell, "Hey, come here," to which I yelled back, "Why? What are you gonna do? Call the cops?" To which they replied, "We are the cops." Oh, it was an unmarked cop car. I yelled back at them, "Oh, duck off," as they walked towards me. We then had a very heated discussion about me having too much to drink and them acting like cunts. It ended with them telling me to go home and not to the party. Then I went to the party. So I was in Uganda with my family, and we see a large, about 5 feet tall, curled up leaf hanging about 8 feet off the ground. We're told that these leaves curl up and fall out the trees, and they're pretty heavy, so it can be dangerous to have it fall on you. My dad and I think, won't it be helpful of us to get this thing down? So, we're there whacking it with sticks, trying to get it down. To no avail. When my dad says, "Hey, climb up on that wall there, son, and jump, grab it and then pull it down." Well, that sounds like a swell idea, Dad, so I do just that. I don't manage to get it all the way down, but as soon as I hit the ground, I get this burning sensation in my elbow. Turns out there's a hive of Ugandan mud wasps living in this specific leaf, and they do not take kindly to young men trying to tug their home down. So I'm just sprinting back to the office where the rest of my family is sheltered from the sun, and I practically have 2 elbows on one arm at this point while, as my dad described it later, an army of large, black dots give chase. I make it back inside and my arm is numb, except for the searing pain in my elbow. Thankfully, there was no further reaction. The pain lasted only around 3 hours and the swelling was down by the end of the day. That being said, it was the worst pain I've ever felt. Even worse than the time I broke my arm into 3 pieces while arm wrestling. I went on a solo trip to Costa Rica when I was 26. I'm a fairly petite female. I speak no Spanish. The eco lodge I was staying at helped me arrange a guide for an all-day hike. We were flown by 4-seater plane into the jungle, a 26-hour walk to the nearest town. We landed. Jose and I hopped out, and the plane took off again, leaving me, Jose and his machete alone for the day. Thankfully it went okay, but as soon as that plane took off I realized I had made a bad choice. In 5th grade I invented a game, where you get the swing as high and fast as you can. Then at the bottom you run off it really fast. Mistimed it, landed on my head on asphalt, got a serious concussion. Edit. Here's a carefully drawn and highly realistic depiction of what happened. Going on a 4-day bender with no sleep, ended up getting the it kicked out of me and required 7 stitches in the back of my head. Spending 2 months wages. losing my brand new Youtube 1000 phone and pissing off numerous ex-girlfriends by declaring my love for them. Oh, and I was hungover for about a week. Haven't had a drink for 3 months now because of my stupidity. Dating my co-worker even though I have been down this path once before. We lasted for a while before I caught him flirting with a new girl in front of me. I found out a lot of things after the fact and it nearly destroyed me. When I was working in retail for the first time, I was hired with 3 other people as seasonal employees for Black Friday and holiday season, and towards the end of the day, they would send us to go bring in any shopping carts buggies that were outside, and usually we would have to push it in ourselves because we didn't have one of those machines that would push it for you, and someone suggested why don't we just make one huge cart line and push it in instead of having 4 different lines, and everyone agreed, so we get everything and lined up about 60-70 something carts. Took 3 of us to push it as it was so heavy, and the other guy guiding it at the front. We managed to get inside the store and into the cart area, but being a whole line and heavy as it, we couldn't stop it in time, so it blew past the rail, and unfortunately on the other side of the cart area is where we kept the dishwashers, refrigerators, TVs that are supposed to be going out for delivery sold. We ended up breaking a TV and denting a fridge. Unfortunately, the store manager was doing his night rounds around the store and saw the whole thing as he was coming down the main hall. We got yelled at pretty bad and immediately just told us to go home and to see him in his office tomorrow morning. It seemed like a good idea though. Lol. Decided to get high and go to a yoga class because I thought I would get a better mind-muscle connection. Turns out the class I decided to go to was being taught by an Eastern European yoga psychopath and had me bending my body in ways I have never done before. Never again. On a rainy day, I saw a hitchhiker near the university asking for a ride. He looked the part of a student, although I never pick up hitchhikers. I felt sorry for him standing in the rain and gave him a lift. It felt like the right thing to do at the time. He told me where he was headed, so I went out of my way to drive him there. The guy just kept staring at me and said very little. When we arrived at his destination, he wouldn't get out of my car, no matter what. Finally, when a police officer came along, I told him to hop out or I'd call the cop over for help. That ended it. But if the officer hadn't come by, I have no idea what might have happened. Having sex with Sherry, she gave me crabs. I had just finished this bike ride with my scout troop and we ended it at the side of a river, so waiting for our parents to pick us up, the boys all go to a rope swing to duck around in the river. It was absurdly shallow. The furthest swing would still land you in 3-foot water. Average lazy swing was 2 feet deep or so. Mom comes. Some dad hollers at me that she's arrived. I run back until I can see her getting out of the car and yell, "One more swing, Mom, I'll be right back." She seems in a good mood. Says okay. Starts chatting with other adults there. So not 2 minutes later I walk up to her with a broken arm. I had gone back for that one more swing. Screwed up and planted my wrist into the shallow water. Broke my arm. And got out of the water saying bye without telling the kids what I'd done. Just sorta walked up to my mom. "Hey, I just broke my arm. Sorry." She was not pleased. Like, seriously, flick my dick. You had to go for one more swing. Come on, let's go get a cast, you idiot. Making bows and arrows with my friends when I was around 13. To ensure that the arrows got stuck in some tree or whatnot, we duct taped 80mm nails at their ends. Then we went shooting around the nearby field with complete disregard of others' positions. I did not take an arrow to the knee, but to the palm of my hand, remembering the friend saying to the other, "No worries, I won't hit him." Luckily nothing serious came from that. In college, a large group of us hiked up to this abandoned mine shaft at night. Took turns squeezing through a small crack in the mountain. The main entrance was closed off. Walked down a long dark corridor with our flashlights. Then set up a campfire in one of the large clearings at the end and proceeded to get wasted. All fun and games until a rather large girl got too drunk and couldn't walk on her own. Getting her out of there was a whole ducked up ordeal. Thought a few times during the process that we were going to have to leave her there in the dark and go get help, especially when my flashlight started to die. Getting taped to a cart, drunk, during a music festival, and then getting rolled down a hill towards a lake, where a lot of people pee. Ducking a shampoo bottle, courtesy of our teenagers. I practiced my golf swing while standing on my bed. It was raining outside. I managed to take out 2 lights with the first swing, the bedside lamp and the overhead light. That one crashed down on my head. Broken glass everywhere. Dating a girl that had a crush on me. Didn't know her all that well beforehand other than that she was relatively quiet and an outsider at school. Relationship eventually ended because I wouldn't let her tie me up and put a knife to my throat during sex. Zero issues with the tying me up part. But the knife was a deal breaker. She did a presentation that compared some hentai to the Bible in our religious instruction class a few weeks after we broke up. The teacher actually let her show a few minutes of a hentai movie before intervening. My 3DS had trouble reading the cartridges, so I put water in the game slot. I no longer have a 3DS. We had 5 people who wanted to ride 2 quads at the same time, 2 people on each max. We ratchet strapped a fridge dolly on the back of one, making sure it was really tight secure. Took the 5th person, ratchet strapped him in with bungee cords rope and took off. It lasted 3 minutes tops. Lost 2 straps. Badly skinned up hand from tipping over. Yeah, it seemed like a good idea. When I was in 1st grade, my 2 friends and I invented a game where we kicked our shoes off of the swings to see who could kick theirs the farthest. Somehow mine ended up on the roof and the janitor had to get it, and I only cried for like 20 minutes. When I was younger, I tried to show my sister that I could swing without holding onto the swing, so I did and I fell. When I was 19, I joined the military. I stuck a googly eye up my nose when I was 3. It got stuck. My mom had to pull it out with tweezers. When asked why I did it, I wanted to see if it fit was my response. I still get the compulsive urge to put things in my nose to this day, usually earbuds. No idea why. Every DIY project repair I've attempted. My friend and I got high one day after school, but my mom hadn't been grocery shopping and we had no snacks. So my friend and I coated raw Pillsbury croissant dough in cinnamon sugar and tried to eat it. Also concerning the munchies, my friend's parents had a huge box of Hot Pockets, and one snow day we got stoned and I ate around 6-9 in one afternoon, which the human gut really isn't equipped to deal with. Summer camp one year. Everyone was getting in barrels to roll down this giant hill. It seemed like tons of fun, so I hopped in one and down I went. Well, the whole time it felt like I was being beaten up by the ground. And I was bruised pretty much from head to toe with a few cuts and scrapes too. Being a young teen, I of course had to act tough and like it was awesome. But it really was not awesome. I thought I was maybe just a wimp or did it wrong. But looking back, it definitely seems it was a dare type thing everyone wanted to prove they were tough enough for. I'm guessing many more than just me had the thought of, well, that wasn't fun. For a film like Class, we needed to record a large variety of sounds with our sound recorders. I like the sloshing sound of my water bottle, and was curious how it would sound if it was flipped. To do this, I flipped the water bottle and tried to record the sound it made. Well, the bottle hit the ground, the cap came off, and water spilled everywhere. Got my notes wet, my shoes wet, my friend wet. I didn't know there was so much water in that bottle. I didn't even get a good sound out of it. Giving my virginity away. I was depressed. The man I was hoping to marry dumped me. Figured waiting didn't matter anymore. My cousin and I were sitting on his balcony on a breezy day, and we decided to spray some of my pepper spray into the air to see what it smelled like. Into the wind. Oh, how our eyes burned. There was alcohol involved. Edit to note that I am pleased that this has made so many of you all smile, but utterly disgusted that BuzzFeed is using it, and they have edited so that a stupid act looks even more stupid than it was. While a friend and I were helping another friend move, we found some of her Zoloft that was who knows how old. She said, "Yeah, you can take it." We had no idea that washing down the pills with bourbon would be so incredibly horrible. The stomach pain and discomfort of that night was unforgettable. 15 years later, we still refer to the night of the Zoloft when we want to compare something bad. I once poured wax down the sink because I was trying to make a wax waterfall, thinking that the wax would harden as it dropped down. I've told this story before, but when I was 16 I was going through the emo punk phase and I decided one day that I wanted to put colored streaks in my hair. So, I went to Walgreens and bought a semi-permanent red dye for dark hair, because I had no idea how to bleach my hair. I get home, apply the dye and think I'm going to look so awesome that it'll be worth it if my parents get pissed. I had no idea what I was doing and instead of ending up with red streaks throughout my hair I ended up with a huge red splotch at the top of my head because all dye clumped together or something. It looked terrible and was no longer worth getting in trouble for. The next morning I see my mom and she takes one look at my hair and bursts into laughter and tells me, "Whoa, you really ducked that up, didn't you?" She wasn't mad. She thought it was hilarious and after a bit of teasing she went to Walgreens and got me a box of black hair dye so I could cover it up and not have to go outside looking like that. In high school my friends and I were lost, before GPS, at night. We pull over to get our bearings and make a plan. I am the driver and decide to make a U-turn. There is a 5-foot long median that I will need to go over. My friend, Kevin, I call him that because of other stories, and I assess the curb from the car and we are pretty confident that it is a low curb. But there were no street lights. There are cars starting to come from the both directions so I gun it to make the U-turn before it is too late. As we approach the curb we both realize the curb is not small. It isn't even medium. It's taller than most and isn't the nicely curved type, but the blocky type. But I am only about 10 feet away and closing when I noticed. I remember hearing Kevin say, "Oh no, it's big, it's big." So my instinct is to not stop, but increase my speed. Hopefully the speed would force my car to pop over the curb. The curb was so tall it scraped the bottom of my bumper. The car did make up onto the median but it felt like we hit it hard and I think I heard the car say ouch. I get my wits about me and zoom out of there before the oncoming traffic gets to me. The car turned out okay, thanks to it being an old heavy Oldsmobile. Me and my cousin found my dad's hunting rifle when we were about 10 and we decided to play with it. I am from the countryside while my cousin is from a town and I decided to show him how cool I am and how I know all about guns. Long story short, I pointed the rifle at him fully sure the safety was on until I heard the click with the barrel point blank pressed into his head. I got such a fright I have never touched a gun again in my life. Even nearly 20 years later, gives me the shivers even thinking about it. Getting really high before a work Christmas lunch at a fancy restaurant. I was 19 in my defense but damn it was awkward trying to talk to people and act normal. Such a bright restaurant. Cutting my own bangs at home. This YouTube tutorial looks so easy. What could go wrong? I asked myself. Hoo boy. Throwing firecrackers out of the car while pulling into my friend's driveway. It was all good and fun till one went off in my lap. I was riding my bike and tried to be faster by leaning while turning. Like a motorcycle. I obviously ended up falling and the skin on my knees and elbows got ripped off. Using a still full bottle of acetone nail polish remover as a dildo. I was 15. Dumb. And horny. And the shape was perfect. It leaked. Came out of a party at uni and my friend told me to jump into a snow pile head first. Thought it would be really funny until the snow pile turned out to have a layer of solid ice on the top. Blacked out for a couple seconds and cut my head pretty badly. There was a diner that I ate at in college 3 or 4 times a week. It closed down due to university expansion, and my buddies thought, let's go reminisce one last time. That ended with cops with guns drawn in our face and a weekend in jail. I don't know if this counted but I introduced myself to the boy I had a huge crush on via text message. I didn't remember how I got his number and insisted that I can be his best friend. Hi, I'm from class A. I know you like a girl in my class. You actually can share your feelings to me. No, I don't like her. Well, if you want to share any story at all, you can text me. I thought I was the most genius person ever. Since I made my first move to a boy I like, I just wanted him to know that I exist. But now I cringe every time I think about how stupid it was, even after 10 years. Playing with my friends at school seems innocent enough, but no. Ended up splitting my knee open and required 23 stitches after landing hard on some